This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Research and empirical data shows us more and more that pairing conventional medicine with complementary gives our pets and ourselves the best options for healing. And we have so many healing options at our disposal. Today on the show is Dr. Steven Sinatra. He's a board-certified cardiologist, board-certified in internal medicine, and a bioenergetic psychotherapist. Now, I had to look that up. But he also was an early proponent of what's called nutraceuticals, which really means just using nutritional supplements as preventative and healing medicine. His latest venture is helping to keep our pets healthier. He's got a line of single ingredient treats and a food topper with the enzyme CoQ10 at its core, and that's what interested me especially. I'm Jody Miller-Young, and you're listening to Bark and Swagger on Pet Life Radio. We're going to take a short break from our sponsor, but when we return, we'll learn why CoQ10 is so important to our pets and our health, and more about Dr. Sinatra's pet brand, Ageless Paws. So grab that favorite beverage, get comfortable, and we'll be right back.
Pets are part of the family. Make sure you can always afford the quality health care they need with Easy Pet Check, a nationwide pet insurance alternative. With Easy Pet Check, you'll save up to 75% on all your pet's health care at any licensed veterinarian in the U.S. Easy Pet Check accepts all dogs and cats regardless of pre-existing conditions. Visit EasyPetCheck.com. That's the letters EasyPetCheck.com. Taking care of your pet can be easy with Easy Pet Check.
Let's talk pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back. If you've just joined, you're about to meet Dr. Steven Sinatra, a board-certified cardiologist and the doctor in the house behind Ageless Paws. This is a new line of healthy treats for our pets with the enzyme CoQ10 at its core. Welcome, Dr. Sinatra.
Oh, it's great to be here, Jody. Thanks for having me.
It is my pleasure. I'm so excited to have you on the show. You have such great information to share to help keep our pets healthier. I was looking through your marketing materials and I noticed it says love is high vibrational. And I really want to start there because in these crazy times, we all need a little more of that, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Tell us what you mean by that statement.
Well, whenever you can take in the energy of love, love is the most vibrational sort of passion feeling that we can have in our bodies. When people are in love, every cell in their body vibrates, and that love can be transmitted. And I can tell you, being a heart specialist, and I've been a dog owner all my years. I mean, ever since I was a child, my younger sister used to bring home strays, and we used to adopt dogs in our house. And I grew up with dogs, and as a board-certified cardiologist, I've always had dogs in the household. But then I realized that when I was treating patients with heart attacks, and Jody, this is amazing, but when my patients went home after a heart attack, if they went home to a house that was full of turmoil, or if they had a judgmental spouse, or if it was an empty house, if they were lonely, these people I would see again. They would come back with recurrent heart attack, or even worse, heart failure.
Wow.
And even sudden death situations. But when I had, patients that when they were released from the CCU or the ICU and went home, and they had like a very supportive spouse, or they had a happy home, that made a difference. But what made the most difference, which is unbelievable, was when they came home to a loving dog, a dog that gives you unconditional love at all times. And when my patients came home to those pets and they saw the love in their eyes and the wagging tail and the licking the face and whatever it was, when a patient after a heart attack takes in this love energy, this is high vibrational. This heals the heart. And I can tell you as a psychotherapist, and as a cardiologist, there is nothing better than love when it comes to healing the heart, even in the presence of recovery from a massive heart attack and situations of heart failure or damaged hearts. I can tell you, dogs, even cats, any pet makes a huge difference.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone listening can relate to having a hard day, coming home, and that welcome.
Oh,
you can do no wrong. It just has to put a smile on your face. So absolutely.
This has been written up in the medical literature. Jim Lynch is a PhD. He was living in the Baltimore area. He wrote the book, The Broken Heart, and I wrote Heartbreak and Heart Disease. And it's amazing that these four-legged creatures bring so much to the table. I mean, it's absolutely incredible for the health and healing of humans is having that four-legged animal with that unconditional love, at our bedsides, in our kitchens. I mean, everywhere. It's just incredible.
I wouldn't give it up for the world. I totally feel you. So food, I want to talk about food a little bit. It's the biggest selling product in the pet space, but as we know, all food is not nutrition. And while pet parents are learning more and more about what goes into good nutrition, I really would love for them to hear from a certified nutrition specialist, which is what you are, about how closely linked good nutrition and pet health and longevity are, and what your experience has been in terms of the most vibrant diet for our pets. And I use the word vibrant because it's all about energy, just as we started on. Our bodies are energy through and through. So please enlighten us.
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that I've learned about dogs and pets, first of all, dogs and cats and humans are all mammals. So in other words, we have the same type of protoplasm and different DNA, but our cells are very similar. And even when I was in medical school, I hate to say this, but we used to do some animal research, all the medical students.
Yeah. It was a long time ago. Yeah.
And, human cadavers as well. But, it's part of the training of a doctor. But since I grew up with dogs all my life, and in the early days when I was a cardiologist, I used to, buy dogs. And, I went to pet shelters and animal shelters and even pet stores. I've been to all of these areas. And I'll never forget, I brought a Norwegian elk hound home and at 3 months. And then I brought a chow into the family and then another chow. So I had 3 dogs and I was going to get a 4th dog, but then I had to get a kennel license in Connecticut. I said, no, I don't want to do that. But the incredible thing is, Jody, is I gave my dogs a lot of people food. In other words, I would give them foods that were enriched with CoQ10 because I did the research on CoQ10 for the last 30 or 40 years. I met all the researchers on CoQ10. I've written books on CoQ10. And since it helped my humans so much, and I kept children off heart transplant lists, Jody, by giving them CoQ10.
Amazing.
Now, a lot of people don't realize this, but a lot of dogs get congestive heart failure. In other words, a lot of the vets call it end of life or cardiomyopathy or old age, but a lot of these dogs get heart failure. They may cough, they may have dreadful fatigue, they'll have problems with their bowels and urination and stuff like that. But a lot of it is cardiac related. So I even worked with vets on this, and it's just amazing. But when I started to feed my dogs, like sardines, for example, or migratory salmon, and the reason why I chose these foods is because not only did it have omega-3 essential fatty acids, which all mammals need, including, humans, right, but like sardines and, animal foods, certainly, meat and fish are well endowed with CoQ10. Like migratory salmon and sardines are incredible for CoQ10. So I would give my dogs this, and then I would also give them like people food and scraps, and then I would get dog foods and dried foods. But then I started to give them CoQ10, and I gave them human CoQ10. In other words, when they got to be 4 and 5 years old, meaning that they were maybe about 28 to 30 or 35 in human age, and I started to see heart problems in humans even before that age, I started to give them CoQ10 supplements. And here's what happened, Jody. I lost my chows at age 15. They were both 15 when they passed. And they passed within a couple of years of one another because I bought one when one was a puppy and I bought one 2 years later. And my elk hound lived to 16. When I researched the literature on the average ages of chows and an elk hound, my gosh, I was 2 years in front of the curve. In other words, my dogs were living 2 years longer than the average chow and elk hound. And I was saying, why is that? Was it because I was giving them animal food, fish, omega-3s? No, it was the CoQ10. Because
Wow.
CoQ10 did the same thing for my patients. I had patients off heart transplant lists. I had patients living longer. And then the literature, in the human literature, shows that people who have heart failure, those given CoQ10, and they've done this in studies in New Zealand, they've done these studies in Spain and Western Europe. They were published in the American Journals of Cardiology, the Bible journals of human cardiology. And what it shows is that humans taking CoQ10 live longer than their counterparts not taking CoQ10, especially those with heart disease. So it made sense that my 2 chows and my elk hound lived at least 2.5 years longer than counterparts, the average age of those dogs. So when I started to develop Ageless Paws, I was looking at treats that are sort of fortified or naturally endowed with CoQ10. So I took bison, for example. Why did I choose bison? Because bison, you can't give human growth hormone or human bovine growth hormone to bison. You can give it to our cattle, but not bison.
Why?
Farmers want to fatten up their cattle.
I know, but why can't they give it to bison? Because they're not farming them?
Thank God the law intervened. It's against.
Okay.
So that's why I started to use bison treats.
Yeah.
And I use turkey heart because turkey heart is endowed with CoQ10. Chicken liver. Chicken livers are one of the best organs to give for CoQ10. And then there's certainly migratory salmon. Migratory salmon are loaded with CoQ10. So I chose foods that we could give, animals, and they're sustainable and stuff like that. And in other words, there's no toxins in these foods or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking for specialized foods to give these treats to dogs. And then I started to add probiotics to a topper mix because, again, as a dog owner, I realized so many digestive complaints occur with dogs. And humans, like dogs, humans need probiotics, So when I'm on a radio show or a TV program and somebody asks me, Dr. Sinatra, what's one of the best foods you can take for your GI tract? Well, sauerkraut comes to mind immediately.
Sure.
Prebiotics and probiotics and prebiotics.
Fermented, sure.
Probiotics. So, it just makes sense to use certain foods to sustain our GI tracts. And humans are like dogs. I mean, we have the same issues because we're mammals. So
we definitely do.
We get parasites. Dogs get parasites.
Yes. But they're luckier than us in certain regards because their digestive tracts are shorter, right? And they have a lot more acid in their stomach. So they're not as prone as we are to picking up parasites and stuff, from the sushi we just ate last week or whatever. But what do you think about, I know you'd mentioned things like organ meats, so you thought that was important. And what do you think about raw versus cooked foods for dogs?
I have no problem with raw. I would say about half my veterinarian colleagues agree with me. Maybe the other half don't.
Oh, so there's hope.
I think raw is good. I don't throw it under the bus. Look, one of the things about dogs is that they have canine teeth. And the wolf sector of the animal kingdom, they have a horrific type of canines that are like almost an inch long. Mm-hmm. And so if you look at the wolf, and, some people believe that the wolf is an ancestor of the dog, et cetera, and if you look at it, dogs have canines. So dogs are sort of taught to rip their flesh with these canine teeth, just like a wolf has. And wolves live out in the wilderness, and they survive on eating, raw food. So I think genetically speaking, dogs are endowed with, these canine capabilities. So in a way, they're meant to eat flesh and raw food as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. There probably are people listening who think that they're feeding their pets very healthy foods. They may not be aware that there are, very unhealthy ingredients, even toxic ingredients to our pets in their foods. And there's one in particular that you had mentioned in an interview that I saw with you, which is rice. What rice contains. I didn't realize, and I'm somebody who is a foodie and very, very conscious about what I eat. And I tend to educate myself. I didn't know about brown rice and what it has that is really, really bad for us. Tell us about that.
About the arsenic situation?
Yes.
With rice? Yeah. See, that's one of the reasons why I developed my healthy food website called Vervana. A doctor like myself, Jody, I've dealt with health and illness for 50 years. I mean,
yes.
The May of next year will be my 50th year of graduation from medical school.
Wow.
And Hippocrates was right. Food is thy medicine. And what a lot of people don't understand is that there are so many foods that we eat on a day-to-day basis that are so contaminated. It's not just insecticides and pesticides. It's mercury, it's cadmium, it's heavy metals, it's arsenic in rice, for example. So, I really like rice. And, one of the best foods that help heal the liver, particularly in this pandemic that we're in COVID-19, because, liver issues, like a non-alcoholic fatty liver is sort of, it's a bad situation to have, especially if you get infected with COVID-19, because you need a powerful immune system. And the liver, is important for immune enhancing, situations in the body. But the reason why I bring this up is that so many people don't realize how unhealthy our food supply is. Now, arsenic is in rice. And when I found this facility in Italy, for example, that tests their rice for arsenic, and it's in the central highlands of Italy.
Wow.
It's not grown in the waters like like we grow in the Carolinas and Louisiana and stuff like that. Our rice in the USA, there's a lot of arsenic in it. And arsenic over time is a neurotoxin. And so is cadmium, and so is mercury. And people don't realize it, but it's important to eat very, very clean, organic as much as possible. And I would do the same thing for our pets. I mean, if people want to give table food to their pets, and if the owners are eating organic food and, certainly grass-fed steaks and stuff like that without bovine growth hormone or, estrogen derivatives or any of these things, it's important to feed our dogs and cats, very nutritious food, because Hippocrates said it, and I agree with it. Medicine is food for these animals as well as humans. And
we're going to lengthen their lives by doing right by them on a nutritional basis.
I think so. That's why I think my chows and elk hound live longer. I really do.
Yes, you are probably right. So I want to talk a little bit more about CoQ10, because you were an early proponent of it. And in addition to your treats and your food topper, you've also created a liquid liposomal supplement of it. Can you explain to our listeners what liposomal means, why it's better, and then talk a little bit about all of the health benefits of CoQ10 for our pets and for us?
Yeah, I've used CoQ10 for almost 40 years now. And the greatest miracles that I've seen with CoQ10 has been in my pediatric patients. I would have, patients come to my office and they were there with their 9-year-old son or their 12-year-old daughter or even a 5-year-old. That was the youngest child I saw in my office. And the parents are crying their eyes out because they're waiting for their children to be heart transplanted, but they can't find a match for the child. And the child is dying. And they would bring them to me because I've had so many saves with in adults with CoQ10 and people who were in cardiogenic shock and were struggling to breathe. And basically, I've resurrected so many humans that pediatric, I guess the word spread through the grapevine or whatever, Jody, but parents were bringing in their children. And then it's just amazing. I have seen the worst congenital cases where children had heart operations, only after a few days old or even a couple of years old. And they were on their second and third heart operation, but they weren't going to survive without a heart transplant. I gave them CoQ10, and now these kids are in their 20s and 30s.
Oh, my God. How amazing.
Heart transplantation because they feel so good. Now, I can tell you why. I mean, somebody smarter than me is going to determine the why behind this. But I think because of the stem cell revolution that we've had in the last 15 to 20 years, especially with the discovery of the Biogenome Project, where they mapped our genes, I think CoQ10, in addition with D-ribose, carnitine, and magnesium, these 4 ingredients are the secret sauce in literally having our chemical messengers, we call them exosomes in the body, literally talk to our intrinsic stem cells. You know, we all have intrinsic stem cells. They're in our fat, they're in our bone marrow. And these stem cells live into our 90s, believe it or not. So if you can develop a nutraceutical program that can talk to our endogenous stem cells, can hearts regenerate themselves? And I've seen it over and over again, even with patients with massive heart attacks. So
wow,
I am thrilled about, using these supplements with humans. And again, I use them in dogs because cardiomyopathy is one of the major leading causes of death in the canine. So as well as the feline. So basically, that's why I started to use them in my dogs, because I learned so much from humans. And again, we're all mammals. So it just made sense to develop these liposomal drops. And the reason why the liposomal drops, it's a liquid, is first of all, you can put a few drops into their bowl of food, so to speak. And dogs love it. My chows loved it with sardines or salmon. It's just absolutely amazing. And by the way, chows are fussy. They're like cats. They're the fussiest eaters of all time. I mean, I would have to sit with my chows, on the floor with them and literally feed them myself sometimes. Because,
oh my God, it sounds like my Sophie.
they're so fussy. It's unbelievable. But anyway, my chows loved it. But the liposomal, it gets into the bloodstream.
So it's more bioavailable. It's easier.
That's the buzzword, yes. And what bioavailable means to your listeners is that these drops get assimilated into the bloodstream. And if it gets into the bloodstream, it gets into the targeted organs where it's desperately needed.
Perfect. I'm going to switch over to what is sort of a new trend emerging, wellness plans for our pets. Now, wellness plans, what they actually are, isn't necessarily new, but they're being given sort of a makeover by positioning them as preventative medicine. In other words, wellness plans instead of just going to the vet. What would you think would make up a strong wellness plan for our pets?
Well, I think feeding them nutritious food is good, giving them targeted nutritional supports like coenzyme Q10. Again, I love omega-3s. I mean, omega-3 essential fatty acids are so important because we really can't make them in a human. There are similar findings in, I guess, mammals as well. But like when you give omega-3s, I remember my chow's coats got so much better. Their joints got so much better. And, one of the things
the brain too.
Oh, the brain.
Great for
absolutely,
the brain.
Because it's DHA, it's docosahexaenoic acid that gets into the gray matter of the brain. But I'll never forget, my chows used to run up and down the stairs here at my house, and they did a little damage to their joints. And when I started to use omega-3 essential fatty acids in my chows, oh my gosh, they just improved significantly. So,
Did you do that through Whole Foods, Dr. Sinatra? Or did you do that with a particular supplement?
Oh, I still work with, I still work with Healthy Directions, and I've been working with supplement companies for over 30 years.
Yeah.
And, we had a calamine oil that comes from Norway. I like calamine over fish oil because I worry about big fish being contaminated with PCBs and polyphenol.
That's coming out more and more in the pet space too.
And mercury and cadmium and stuff like that. So one thing good about a squid is that a squid only lives in the ocean for 450 days. They're small. They're only about the size of a very, very large grapefruit. And the oil in these calamine, squid-like creatures is endowed with much more DHA as opposed to EPA. EPA is great for arthritis, but DHA is good for the brain, it's good for the heart, and it's good for eyesight. It's good for retina of the eyes. So I gave my dogs the calamine oil, and at first I gave them fish oil, and I switched over to calamine oil, and again, they did fine. So any omega-3 is good for a dog or a cat. I just think, again, if you give them sardines or salmon or fish meals, like in Florida, I guess, small mackerel are very, very healthy. And they're oily fish, and they got a lot of omega-3s in them. So, small mackerel would be good. Scamp would be good because it's a grouper type fish, but it's not a big fish. It's the big fish I worry about with contamination.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're also now talking a lot about green-lipped mussels.
Oh, I love it.
From New Zealand.
I love it. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm working with a Norwegian company right now. I'm trying to come out with a joint product for dogs and cats with green lipid mussel and green tea extract. And, other nutraceuticals that assuage the chronic inflammation that these four-legged creatures get.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to leave listeners with this because it's so valuable to us, even though it's not a pet question. As a doctor and a nutrition expert and a nutraceuticals expert, what advice can you give my listeners about how best to protect themselves, ourselves, in this age of COVID?
Oh, that's a great question. Number one, sugar comes to mind immediately. Remember this, Jody. The average American takes in about 160 pounds of sugar a year. I mean, think about that. So
Crazy.
If a mother brings somebody to a fast food restaurant and orders one of these 16-ounce colas, they're getting about 40 teaspoons of sugar in there. I mean, think about that. That's horrific. Yeah. One of the reasons why we have 100 million diabetics or pre-diabetics or insulin-resistant diabetics in the United States of America, it's absolutely, we eat too many carbohydrates and too many simple carbohydrates. Now, certain simple carbohydrates are okay, like a half a teaspoon of honey or a half a teaspoon of maple syrup. If you want to put that in your tea or coffee, I don't have a problem with that. But I've seen people put teaspoons and teaspoons of sugar in their beverages, and they were all dead calories. And remember this, we're in a pandemic right now. So the more sugar you eat, and this is what I want your listeners to get from a heart specialist like myself, sugar in a diet stifles what we call the phagocytosis capabilities of white blood cells. So when our white blood cells are like killer cells, right? So if we get exposed to COVID-19 or a bacterial infection or a sinus infection, our white blood cells go into killer mode and they help to engulf these pathogens. However, if you're eating a lot of carbohydrates, a lot of sugary foods, and you're eating a lot of donuts, candies, bagels, lots of semolina pastas. If you're eating these foods, breakfast cereals, for example, and using, white table sugar at the same time, your white blood cell or your killer cell, your natural killer cell activity is in handcuffs. And we need our white blood cells going forward to neutralize, these pathogens in our body. That's why I like onions and garlic. Onions are one of the best foods you can take in the diet, especially against COVID-19, because it sequesters a lot of these respiratory viruses. And I'll tell you this, Jody, when I was a young doctor, I was involved with a lot of journal reading and in journal clubs. And I'll never forget this one article. It came out of the Netherlands, and it looked at aging males. And they were only interested in how long you lived. They didn't care if you died from cancer, heart disease, neurodegenerative disease, diabetes. They didn't care, the researchers. They wanted to know one thing, how long you lived and what you ate. And the specific foods that they were interested in were onions, green apples, and black teas, like, beverage teas.
Yeah.
And the reason being is all those foods contain quercetin, which is a bioflavonoid. And this quercetin rockets the immune system. So what they found in these aging Dutchmen was that the longest living Dutchmen into their hundreds, low hundreds and late 90s and mid 90s, they found that they had the highest blood levels of quercetin. So the Dutchmen eating the most onions lived the longest. Yeah. So onions, onions are great. It's a great food.
All onions?
Yeah. Yeah. Any onions.
And raw, obviously, because you don't want to cook the goodness out.
You can cook them, but I put raw onions in my salads all the time.
Me too.
I use artichokes, onions, raspberries, blueberries, organic strawberries. Everything's organic. I'll mix it with kale and a little bit of cabbage and lettuce. I try to get a dozen fresh fruits and vegetables in my salads. It only takes me about 5 or 10 minutes.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, Dr. Sinatra, because fructose, there are some people who believe that fresh fruit sugar is not good.
They
don't necessarily lump it in with white sugar, but they believe that it's not good and you really have to be careful. And there are only certain fruits that you should lean towards.
You're making a very good point. I agree with you 100%. So, the fruits that I tend to take less of is because of the fructose connection that you mentioned. So watermelon, guava, certainly mango. I tend to eat less of those, but blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, strawberries, if they're organic, they have lots of fiber in there, okay? And that the fiber content will delay the absorption of glucose as well as fructose, because there is some fructose, in those fruits. But again, the heavily glycemic fruits, I tend to eat less of, and I eat more of the fruits because you want the bioflavonoids, you want the carotenoids, you want the polyphenols going forward. This is very, very important. And remember this, Jody, whenever you use these salads with all these fruits and vegetables, You want to douse it with lots of olive oil. Look, olive oil is the secret sauce of the Mediterranean diet. That's why we offer it at Vervana. We use California olive oils because we get the seal of approval because it's 100% extra virgin. A lot of the olive oils come out of Western Europe. Unfortunately, they're cut with canola oils, which are good for machines, but not for humans. But look at it this way. There are more 100-year-old people living in the Mediterranean basin, whether it's Libya or whether it's the island of Crete or Greece or Turkey or Spain. It doesn't matter. But the common denominator is that they use an olive oil. And the data on olive oil, and not just the Predemed study, which showed that people taking 4 tablespoons of olive oil, not only did they have less Alzheimer's, cancer, and heart disease, as opposed to the American Heart Association diet, they use that as a control, but they're living longer, taking 4 tablespoons of olive oil.
And olive oil as opposed to avocado oil?
Yes, olive oil. This is olive oil now. And the reason being is that there was an article that came out of the genetic literature only less than a decade ago that showed that olive oil takes pro-inflammatory genes that we're all born with. You know, everybody's born with pro-inflammatory genes. But if you take in olive oil on a daily basis, you can take these pro-inflammatory genes and turn them back to a non-inflammatory state. So that's one of the reasons why I believe extra virgin olive oil is the secret sauce of the Mediterranean diet. And that's why, you know, we use it at Vervana. We get it from California. And I think that for longevity purposes and for supporting the immune system, olive oil is, you know, one of the oils to go. And I do like avocado oil as well, but I prefer olive oil more because of the polyphenol content. And,
wow, that is really great information. Great information. And then there were some nutraceuticals that I heard you mention in an interview of yours that I listened to help people shore up their immune systems when it comes to COVID.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Certainly vitamin D. I mean, vitamin D you can take to the bank. I mean, you're in Florida right now, Jody. I'm in the Northeast, but I take between 5,000 and 10,000 units a day while I'm up here. Once I go back to Florida, I'll go back down to 2,000 to 5,000 units a day.
I do 5,000 a day.
Yeah, 5,000 a day is good. And when you walk the beach, and I hope you're walking the beach with your shoes off and no sneakers, you're walking.
I got to do more of that. More of earthing. Yes.
Yeah, more of earthing. But like, you know, if you walk in a bathing suit and get that sun in your body, look, a half hour of sunlight is not going to give you cancer. I can tell you that.
No.
But you know why? Because if you're taking CoQ10 and you're taking melatonin at night, those two nutraceuticals together will block the UV light that comes into the body that's cancer causing, but it's used up in a half hour. It's used up in the defense against, you know, the carcinogenic causes of UV light. So a half hour of sunlight in anybody, it's not going to cause any cancer as long as they're taking, you know, CoQ10, because that's the most defensive nutraceutical that we can use, you know, in people who want to, you know, go out into the sun. And certainly melatonin works as well. Okay, great. So vitamin D is huge. I mentioned quercetin. Quercetin is really good. Again, you can take it as a supplement. You can take it, you know, in the food supply. I love CoQ10. I mean, CoQ10, it combats what we call inflammatory mediators, like what we call, like doctors call NF-kappa B, interleukin 6. Now, probably a lot of your listeners are privy to C-reactive protein, certainly. And when C-reactive proteins are high in the body, in the bloodstream, this is a weakness when it comes to getting heart disease. We know that people with higher C-reactive proteins get more heart disease because it's an index of inflammation. So in other words, CoQ10 helps to combat that. So I like CoQ10, certainly vitamin D, vitamin C I like, especially if it's combined with glutathione. You know, and again, there's so many natural foods you can eat. We talked about avocado. I love artichoke. Oh my God, artichoke is incredible for the liver. And when you combine nutraceuticals with a healthy diet and avoid sugars, that's the trifecta. Healthy diet, targeted nutraceuticals, omit as much sugar as you can. And that's going to give you the blueprint going forward for not getting COVID-19. And if you do get it, at least your immune system is going to fight it, especially with a good blood level of vitamin D or vitamin D3, calcium-calciferol on board. It's all about the immune system. So thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it. You're a wealth of amazing information. Ageless Pause sounds phenomenal.
Everybody, I encourage you to try it out. Definitely take the information on CoQ10 to the bank. Look into that for your pets and tell people where they can find Ageless Paws, Dr. Sinatra.
Oh, I mean, we're online, Ageless Paws and Vervana.com is our healthy food site. But I'll tell you in closing, I just want to say this. Pets have given so much to my cardiac patients over decades that the reason why I developed Ageless Paws, Jody, is I wanted to give something back to pets. See, my dogs taught me how to be a better doctor, believe it or not.
Aww.
They taught me that.
Yeah.
And, I just want to give back to pet owners. And, when it comes to pets, they're like our children. They're part of the family. And we want them healthy. And, we don't want them in veterinarian offices. We want to keep them out of there. And, not that I have anything against veterinarians, but, even when my chow developed melanoma of the tongue, she developed malignant melanoma because chows have a black tongue. Melanoma is a frightful cancer in humans. But when the veterinarian wanted to take out her tongue, I said, absolutely not. So I cured my chow, with, nutraceuticals, and I used a Rife machine, a vibrational machine that kills cancer cells. So
bless you. I love that.
Hey, listen, dogs to me are my life.
They're our kids. They are our furry kids. You said it, and it's absolutely
They're our kindred spirits.
Feel it.
They're our kindred spirits.
Yes, they are. And they can teach us if we just look and listen.
Watch. Oh, Jody, there's one movie you got to see.
What?
Oh my God, it just came to me.
What?
It's about a race car driver, and it's called Driving in the Rain.
I heard about it.
Driving in the Rain. You got to see that movie, Jody.
It was a book too.
Yes. Oh, Jody.
Yes.
Oh, that is an incredible movie.
I heard it was a real tearjerker.
Oh, the ending is such a beautiful end. It's such a good movie. Jody, take it from me, a heart specialist. Watch this movie in the next couple of days. Please.
And cry, because you said crying is one of the best heart healthy things you like a baby.
And you're going to heal your heart at the same time.
Yes. Dr. Sinatra is offering the Bark and Swagger family, that's you, a 20% discount on your first order for any products on his Ageless Paws site, except gifts and gift cards. So just go to agelesspaws.com and put in the code Evergreen20 and try out his single ingredient CoQ10 treats, his food toppers, his CoQ10 liquid. It's all for cats and dogs. It's all really healthy. And you know how important CoQ10 is now for our pets. So go to his site, agelesspaws.com, and enjoy. And let me know how you like them. Now, if people want to find out more about you, Dr. Sinatra, in terms of your supplements, which, by the way, I just bought your CoQ10 supplement, and health advice, of which there's plenty, where can they find you?
Well, I mean, I don't want to sound like a salesman or anything.
No, but tell them if they want to learn more.
Well, if they want to learn more, go to drsinatra.com.
That is some valuable information right there. Thank you so much, Dr. Steven Sinatra. You have been wonderful to have on my show, and I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. This was a lot of fun.
I'm glad, and thank you all for listening. Thanks to our producer, Mark Winter. Mark, you make us sound so good. We love you for that. My passion is living stylishly, animal rescue, and health. So tune in next time to discover the designers, home decor, rescue stories, and health experts with great stories and important info to share. So until next time, when fierce fashion calls, bark and swagger.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.